Hello everybody, I'm Zoe and this is my big lockdown math off pitch. I'm going to be talking about this game, Geistes Blitz, or you might alternatively know it as the grabby game. It's a great game, but I've made an alternative version of this, which has got a mathematical property that Geistes Blitz doesn't have. But before we talk about the maths, I'm going to explain to you how Geistes Blitz, the original game, works. Okay, so the first thing to notice is that there are 5 objects in the game. So we've got the white ghost, the blue book, the green bottle, the grey mouse and the red chair. And there are 60 cards, and each of those cards defines one of those 5 objects. And a player takes the top card, everybody has a look, and they try and work out which of the objects that card defines. And the aim is to be the first player to grab the object that that card defines. Now, why this card defines the red chair, you might have spotted, but we'll come back to in a second. If you are the player who grabs the correct thing first, then you get to keep that card, and the aim is to be the player with the most cards at the end of the game. So why does that card define the red chair? Well, the rule is that you're looking for the object that doesn't have any of its properties displayed on that card. And now if we have a look at that card, we've got the book on there, so it's not going to be the book. We've got the white of the white ghost on there, so it's not going to be the white ghost. We've got the mouse on there, we've got green on there in the mouse, so green bottle is not the correct answer. And that leaves the red chair. So the red chair is the correct object. Let's have a go at another one, see if you can do it at home. So here we go. That's the card. Have a think, let's put these people back so we can see what's going on. So this one, right, so we've got the ghost, so it's not the ghost. We've got red, it's not red. We've got mouse, we've got green, and so that leaves the blue book. So the object you would grab in this case is the blue book. That seems all right, but actually it's a little bit more complicated than that. So that type of card that we've just looked at is only one type of card in the game. I call that in this video type 1 card, and there's a second type called type 2 cards. And here is an example of one of those. And so you might notice that one of the objects on that card is in its correct colour, and it's the red chair. So the red chair is there in its correct colour. And that's what's special about a type 2 card. There'll be one object in its correct colour, and then the second object will not share any properties with the correct object. And so in this one, the second object is a green book, right? So it doesn't share any properties with the red chair. And if you see an object that is in its correct colour, then that is the one that you grab. And so the game works as 2 different types of cards. They're all shuffled up, you don't know what order they're in, and you reveal a card. And if it's a type 1 card, so if there's no object there in its correct colour, then you go for the object that has none of its properties displayed on that card. But if there is one in its correct colour, then that's the object that you go for. So let's have a go at playing. You can stop the video at home if that helps. Can you work out what object you would grab now? There you go. So I think that I have not got green bottle displayed. Neither the bottle nor green are displayed on that card, so I think I would grab the green bottle in this case. So there we go, so that was a type 1 card. Let's try another one. Okay, I'm not seeing book and I'm not seeing green, so I'm going to go for... Sorry, I'm not seeing book, I'm not seeing blue, so I'm going to go... Oh no, that's wrong, that is incorrect. Blue book is not the only shape there, the only object there that is not displayed at all. Also, the mouse is not displayed at all. How? Well, that's because the correct answer is the green bottle. This is a type 2 card. This is an object in its correct colour. I've just made a classic Geistes Blitz mistake. This is a type 2 card, so I should be grabbing the green bottle. So now we know how to play Geistes Blitz, let's look at my alternative version of this game. So my game uses shapes rather than objects, and it uses stylings rather than colours. And so we can see we've got the filled-in star, we've got the triangle with the dashed edges, but just like Geistes Blitz, I'm putting 2 on every card, and you can print my game out. No objects required, you just need to look in the links below, print it out, play it at home. I mean, granted, it's a little bit less exciting than Geistes Blitz because you don't get to grab the object that matches up. You just have to put your hand on the printout of the shape that matches up. A bit less exciting, but more exciting mathematically because it's got a property that Geistes Blitz doesn't have. So across all of the cards in Geistes Blitz, all of the possible objects do not appear the same number of times. When I say possible objects, I mean both correct objects and wrong objects. So for example, the green bottle here is a correct object. It's an object in its correct colour. but the white chair is a wrong object. And if you've ever played Geistes Blitz and thought, oh wow, that the white bottle appears a lot of times, it's not your imagination, it really does. So it appears 7 times, whilst the grey book appears twice. I thought this was a little bit dissatisfying, so I fixed this in my game. So all of my possible shapes appear the same number of times across my cards. And the first thing I had to do to fix this was to change the number of cards in the pack. So it's impossible for this game to have my property if you're using 60 cards like Geistes Blitz does. Why is that the case? And actually my question for you at home is, what's the least and what's the highest number of unique cards that you can have in your game so that it will have the property that I want? And when I say unique cards, I don't care which order the 2 shapes on my cards are. And I should probably clarify that in the game of Geistes Blitz, each of the 5 objects does match up a fifth of the time. So, for example, a fifth of the cards will define the ghost, and a fifth of the cards will define the bottle, and so on. It's just that all of the possible shapes, wrong or correct, do not appear the same number of times across the cards. So my question is, what's the least and what's the highest number of unique cards you can make in this game so that it's got that property that I want? You can stop the video now and have a think about it. We'll come back to it in a second. Welcome back. Hopefully you've had a chance to play around with that. And actually one of the reasons that I chose this for my pitch is because it's relatively accessible. So maybe if you've got young people at home, they can have a go too. But my question was, what's the least and the highest number of unique cards that you can make in this game so that it's got my property? And first we might notice that there are 25 different possible shapes. Here they are. And you might notice that all of our correct shapes are along this diagonal. And next I'm going to try and work out what our maximum number of unique cards is. But I'm not going to worry about whether my property holds just yet. And to do that I'm going to think about how many different possible cards I could make that say are type 1 and match up with the square. Let's start like that. And so a type 1 card has got 2 wrong shapes on it, and neither of those wrong shapes are allowed to share any properties with the thing it matches up with, so with the square. And so on this grid I have cancelled out anything which has got a square shape and anything that is not filled in, like the square. And of course actually I've also crossed out all of the correct shapes because we're just looking for wrong shapes. And so there are 12 different possible shapes that can go onto this card. And that kind of makes sense because, well, we've got 4 different options for what the shape type can be. As long as it's not a square, we're fine. And then once we've chosen that, there are 3 options then for what the styling type can be. It can't be the same as a square and it can't be the same as itself, because then it would be correct. So that's all good. 4 times 3 makes 12. And the next thing I'm going to think about is how many pairs of these 12 can actually go on the same card together, because I don't think it's going to be 12 choose 2, because not every single pair is compatible. So let's imagine that we choose, I don't know, this shape as our first shape. And now in order for this card to match up with the square needs to be the only shape that doesn't have any of its properties displayed. And there are 4 properties displayed on any card, and there are 4 shapes left over. So I can't use any shape twice. And so this one that I've ticked, I've used triangle for the shape, I've used pentagon for the styling, so I can't use either of those shapes again in order for there just to be the square left out. And so I definitely cannot use any of these again. They're all triangle in shape. I can't use anything that's triangle in style. I can't use anything that's pentagon in style. I can't use anything that's pentagon in shape. And this leaves me just with these 2 here. Which again makes sense because there are now only 2 shapes left that we can use, and we can use one of them for the shape and one of them for the styling. And so we've got 12 different ways of choosing the first shape on the card, and then we've got 2 different ways of choosing the second shape on the card, so 24 cards. Well, that all seems fine until we remember that I don't care about the order of the shapes on the card. So 24 counts everything twice, so actually we've got 12 cards that match up with the square and that are type 1. So if we've got 12 type 1 that match up with the square, well then we've got 60 type 1 in total, because there are 5 different shapes. So 60 type 1 cards in total, I'm happy with that. But what about type 2 cards? So type 2 cards have got a correct shape and a wrong shape, and that wrong shape can't share any properties with the correct shape. So I think we're back at this grid again. If we want our type 2 shape to match up with a square, for example, then that wrong shape, it can't be square in shape, it can't be square in styling, and it can't be a correct shape, and so we've got 12 options again. That means we're going to have 60 type 2 cards. And so 120 is the maximum number of unique cards you can make in this game, but will my property hold? So 60 type 1 cards, that's going to give us 120 wrong shapes across just those cards, because it's 2 per card. But we're also going to get 60 wrong shapes from the type 2 cards, and also 60 correct shapes. And so the total number of wrong cards across the pack is going to be 180, which means that each of the possible wrong shapes appears 9 times. There's 20 possible wrong shapes. It's the grid of 25, subtract the 5 correct ones. And then what about the correct shapes? Is that the same? So 60 correct shapes, and we've got 5 different types, so no, we're going to have each of them appearing 12 times. So this doesn't work. So this isn't the maximum number of cards you can make such that my property holds. It's going to be lower than this. But this has given me some ideas about how we could find a number of cards that works, and it inspired me to do some algebra. I've got A different type 1 cards across the pack and B type 2 cards. And so there are 2 A wrong shapes that come from type 1 cards and B wrong shapes that come from the type 2 cards, so our total is 2A plus B, and therefore the number of times that each possible wrong shape appears across the pack is that divided by 20, and we want to set that equal to the number of times each of the correct shapes appears. So B is our total, 5 different types, so that's going to be B divided by 5. Do some algebra, make it look a lot nicer. There we go. Let's expand some brackets, subtract 5b from both sides. Now that looks a lot nicer. Let's call that a equals 15 over 10b. We've got a linear equation. We've got an infinite number of solutions, but we need each of those solutions to be integers. So if we want a to be an integer here, we need b to be even. So yeah, it's 1.5b, so we need b to be even. So b is even, but b is also a multiple of 5. Because there are 5 different correct shapes and they only appear on the type 2 cards. So if we want them all to appear the same number of times, we've got to have a multiple of 5 type 2 cards. So B is a multiple of 5, it's a multiple of 2, it's therefore a multiple of 10. And so our first solution comes from when we say that B is 10, and therefore A turns out to be 15. And so 25 cards in total is the least number of cards you can make that will be able to have my property. Then you can keep on going, you can say what if B was 20 and so on. There you get all the way down to B equals 40, A equals 60, and then you realise that's when you've got to stop, because as we saw earlier on, the maximum number of unique type 1 cards that you can make is 60. And so 100 is the highest number of cards that you can have that makes my property hold, 25 is the least, 100 is the highest, but actually in my pack of cards I've used 50, so I've used this option here. And obviously you've got to be a little bit clever when you're making your cards, when you're designing your cards, so that even though the numbers work out, all of the possible shapes do appear the same number of times across the pack. And you can do that for all of these 4 options, so maybe that's something that you can try at home and see if you can do. But this is not the only thing that you can investigate in this game. Could you change something? Could you maybe change it so that instead of having 2 properties, the shapes have got 3 properties? Maybe they've got a colour. How does that change the game? How many different possible cards in your new game? The possibilities are endless, enjoy, and if you download my cards and play it, have fun with that, you'll notice that not only do all the possible shapes appear the same number of times across the pack, I also spent far too much of my life making it so that each of the shapes appears twice on the top of the cards and twice on the bottom of the cards. So it's all entirely fair. There we go. Thanks very much for watching my video. I hope you enjoy the rest of the big lockdown math off.